Hello, welcome to Phantom Homicide, the Atlanta murders of 1979-1981. Justice, fibers, and the lingering doubt.
And welcome. We're really going deep today into a really dark chapter in Atlanta's history, a time of intense fear that gripped the entire city.
Yeah, it really tested that whole image, didn't it? The city too busy to hate.
It absolutely did, because this isn't just, another true crime story. We're looking at how a city, lauded for progress, kind of spectacularly failed some of its most vulnerable people.
That contrast is stark, and it's key to understanding everything that followed. So our mission today really is to dive into the sources, look at what happened over those 2 years.
Right. We'll be examining it all: race, the justice system, or maybe the failures of the system, and this really new forensic science that became central.
Groundbreaking, but yeah, hugely controversial. Even then, it's a story where you see hope, this desperate need for justice, just go crashing against doubt, maybe even politics.
And the scale.
Yeah.
It's just staggering when you weigh it out. Between July 1979 and May 1981, we're talking about at least 28 people. African-American children, teenagers, young adults, all murdered.
28 lives. The fear must have been unimaginable, just paralyzing for those communities.
Absolutely. And as most people know, it did eventually lead to an arrest. Wayne Williams, an Atlanta guy.
Right, but his conviction, that's where it gets complicated, isn't it? He was convicted, but only for 2 murders.
Exactly. 2 adult victims, Nathaniel Cater and Jimmy Ray Payne. He got 2 consecutive life sentences for those specific murders.
But this is the absolute core of the controversy, the thing that people still argue about. 4 decades later, the police then took a huge step.
They did. They basically said, okay, we got him for these 2, and then they closed the books on 23 other murders, mostly kids and teenagers.
Attributed them all to Williams, without charging him for those specific cases, without separate trials for those victims.
Precisely. No charges, no trials for the other 23. Just closed. And that decision, well, it's been debated, questioned, fought over ever since. Our sources really dig into why.
So let's set that scene a bit more. Atlanta in the late 70s. What was the feel?
On the surface, optimistic, progressive even. You had Maynard Jackson as mayor, the first black mayor of a major southern city. Big symbol, the New South.
The city too busy to hate narrative.
Exactly. But beneath that veneer, the sources, especially when you look at where the victims came from, it tells a very different story.
Disadvantaged communities, right.
Overwhelmingly.
Yeah.
Economically struggling neighborhoods, often dealing with the aftermath of, big urban renewal projects, highways cutting through communities.
So isolated, vulnerable.
Yeah, geographically vulnerable, close to highways, industrial zones. It highlighted these deep socioeconomic divides that the city's progressive image didn't really cover.
It sounds like the political progress was real on one level, but the actual physical structure of the city, the poverty, the roads left these specific areas exposed.
That's a really good way to put it.
Yeah.
And that vulnerability, that exposure, becomes terrifyingly clear when you start looking at the timeline of the disappearances.
Okay, let's walk through that. Because the way it escalated, it shows not just the rising panic, but also how slow the official response seemed to be, at least initially.
It started almost quietly, if you can say that about murder. Summer of '79. Warnings that tragically just weren't really heard.
The first 2 victims.
Edward Hope Smith, they called him Teddy, 14 years old. And Alfred Evans, nicknamed Q, he was 13, found just 4 days apart in July '79.
How were they killed?
Smith had a gunshot wound, .22 caliber, in his upper back. His body was found near some woods. Evans? The details are less clear initially. Police first thought maybe local stuff, gangs, disputes,
Not connected?
isolated incidents, they assumed.
Yeah. But then, September 79, Milton Harvey, 14. He vanished, just running an errand for his mom.
Just disappeared. His bike turned up a week later, dumped somewhere remote, but his body, not found until November. That delay, finding the bike but not the body, that became a pattern early on. It fed this feeling that the killer was just out there, operating freely.
Undetected.
Yeah.
And then came Yusuf Bell. He was only 9.
October '79.
Yeah.
And the detail of his errand, it's just so mundane, so
Yeah.
chillingly normal. He went to buy Bruton snuff for a neighbor.
And someone saw him.
A witness later said they saw him getting into a blue car.
Yeah.
Then he vanished. His body wasn't found until November inside an abandoned elementary school.
And the way he was found, specific details there.
Yeah, really specific. Strangled, had been hit over the head twice. And this really strange detail, a piece of masking tape was stuck to his cut-off short.
The masking tape.
Yeah.
It's there.
Yeah. And here's where you see that initial failure really taking shape. Despite the pattern emerging, young black boys Disappearances, bodies found later, signs of
They
violence.
didn't link Yusuf Bell's death to Teddy Smith or Alfred Evans.
No, not immediately. They treated it separately.
Oh.
That failure to connect the dots, that lost time, it was critical while the killer, or killers, just kept going.
And 1980 is when it truly explodes into a full-blown crisis.
Absolutely catastrophic. March 1980, the first confirmed female victim. Angel Lanier, just 12 years old.
How long was she missing?
Vanished, then found 6 days later. Strangled, like Bell, but with more. Ritualistic details, almost.
Like what?
A pair of white underwear was stuffed in her mouth. Underwear that didn't belong to her. And her hands were tied with an electrical cord.
Okay, so the killer seems to be escalating. Becoming bolder, maybe? More specific in the methods?
It certainly looked that way. Then, just a week after Angel Lanier was found, another boy disappears. 11-year-old Jeffrey Mathis.
And there was a sighting in his case, too.
Yes. A witness later reported seeing him get into a blue car. There's that blue car again. But this time with 2 men described. One light-skinned, one dark-skinned.
A blue car again, that should have set off alarm bells everywhere.
You'd think so. But Mathis's body, it wasn't found for almost a year. By then, it was so decomposed, the cause of death couldn't even be determined.
A whole year. The not knowing must have been torture for the family.
Unimaginable. Then, in May 1980, slightly different case, Eric Middlebrooks, 15, found next to his bike. He'd apparently left home in a rush.
Cause of death.
Blunt force trauma. But there were other details, slight stab wounds on his chest and arms, and his pockets were turned inside out, suggesting robbery, maybe?
But there was another angle, too.
Yeah, sources mentioned he'd recently testified against 3 other teenagers in a robbery case. So was this related? Retribution? Or was it the same killer changing tactics?
Or maybe not the same killer at all for this one.
Exactly. That's the question that starts creeping in. The one John Douglas, the FBI profiler, would later echo. Maybe it wasn't all one person.
The summer of 1980, the sources paint the picture of just pure terror across Atlanta.
Oh, absolutely. Parents were terrified, keeping kids indoors, pulling them from school, curfews. Volunteer patrols started popping up. The city felt haunted.
And the disappearances continued.
Relentlessly. LaTonya Wilson, only 7 years old, allegedly snatched right from her apartment window by 2 men.
On her window.
That was the report. The very next day, Aaron Weich, 10 years old, seen near a grocery store getting into, guess what?
A blue car.
A blue Chevrolet, yeah. The description matched the car seen in the Jeffrey Mathis disappearance.
And Aaron Weich?
His death was officially listed as asphyxiation from a broken neck, supposedly from a fall under a bridge where his body was found. But given the pattern, the blue car, you have to wonder.
Yeah, that explanation feels convenient, maybe, amidst all the other strangulation.
It does raise questions. Then in August, the clear pattern returns. Clifford Jones, 13, found strangled behind a dumpster.
Just awful. But you mentioned one case in particular that became really crucial for the investigation later, focusing on trace evidence.
Yes. Charles Stevens, 12 years old, found suffocated in October 1980. His case really sets the stage for the trial and the focus on fibers and hairs.
Okay, let's zoom in on Charles Stevens. What was found?
Well, first, his body was missing a shirt and 1 shoe. Investigators noted these sort of rub marks on his nose and mouth.
Suggesting suffocation, like with a cloth or something pressed hard.
Exactly. But the really critical evidence, the stuff that became central later, was microscopic. Hairs and fibers.
What kind?
They found dog hairs on his body, and significantly, 2 Caucasian head hairs.
Caucasian hairs. On a young black victim in this series.
Yes. And even more confusing, they found pubic hairs about 950 feet away from the body. Hairs that did not match Stevens. And crucially, did not match Wayne Williams either.
So multiple unknown hair types found in connection with this victim. Dog hair, Caucasian head hair, unidentified pubic hair.
Right. Despite that contradictory evidence, or maybe because of the dog hair link, this case, Charles Stevens, was labeled a pattern case by the prosecution. It foreshadowed just how heavily they were going to rely on trace evidence, even when it wasn't straightforward.
It feels like they were starting to build a narrative around certain types of evidence.
That's certainly how it appears in hindsight. And the killings just kept going into 1981. The pattern largely holds, but the victim profile starts to widen a bit.
How so?
January 81, Luby Gitter, 14, disappears. Then Terry Pugh, 15, and Terry Pugh. He lived in the exact same apartment building as the very first victim, Teddy Smith.
Wow, that geographical link is just inescapable. Back to the same
It
building.
really hammers home how concentrated the terror was in certain areas. Then, by March 81, the victims start including young adults.
This is where Williams would eventually be charged.
Right. Eddie Duncan, 21, is the first adult victim listed in the series. Then Larry Rogers, 20. John Porter, 28. Jimmy Ray Payne, 21.
And there was something about Porter and Payne's backgrounds.
Yeah, sources note they were both ex-convicts, recently out of prison. So now the profile includes young men, some with criminal records. It complicates things again. Is it one killer with a widening target range? Or are other unrelated homicides getting swept into this massive investigation?
That's a huge question, especially when you look at the next victim, William Barrett. He was 17.
Billy Starr Barrett, yeah. May 1981. What's crucial here is a witness, Harold Wood. He came forward with a very specific sighting.
What did he see?
He claimed he saw a black man standing over the spot where Barrett's body was later found, and importantly, he saw the man drive away in a very distinctive car. A white over blue Cadillac.
Not a station wagon, a Cadillac. Another vehicle description entering the mix.
Exactly. And then the last victim officially linked to this series, Nathaniel Cater, 27 years old. End of May, 1981.
And the sighting for Cater, this one directly involved the suspect, right?
Reportedly, yes. He was last seen at the entrance of the Rialto Theater downtown, allegedly holding hands with Wayne Williams.
Holding hands, that detail. It's intimate, strange.
It is. And it placed Williams directly with Cater shortly before he's believed to have been killed. His body was found 2 days later.
Okay, so if you take all 28 names, all these locations, is there a geographic coherence?
Absolutely. Investigator Chet Detlander, who worked on the case, actually mapped it all out. And it was stunning. Almost all the victims, their disappearance points or body recovery sites, fell within this defined geographic area, linked by one major road, Memorial Drive, and about 11 key cross streets.
So not random scatterings across the city, a defined hunting ground.
Very much so. And this ties back to what we discussed earlier, the city's infrastructure. Author Ginger Strand wrote about this, connecting the murders to what she called freeway racism.
Explain that connection.
The idea is that major highway construction in the 60s and 70s often deliberately cut through or isolated low-income black neighborhoods.
Creating areas that were maybe less patrolled, easier to access, and leave quickly via the highway.
Precisely, making them vulnerable. These weren't just random locations. The sources suggest the killer exploited the very geography created by urban planning decisions, using roadsides, bridge underpasses, wooded areas, near highways as disposal sites. Easy in, easy out.
The killer wasn't just hunting people, but hunting within a landscape shaped by systemic issues.
That seems to be a key insight. And understanding that context makes the initial failures of the investigation even more glaring.
Right, let's talk about that investigation. Sources call the initial response fragmented and inadequate. What went wrong?
Well, part of it was just bureaucratic. You had Atlanta Police, Fulton County, DeKalb County, the GBI, different jurisdictions not always talking to each other effectively.
Silos?
Yeah, classic silos. But the deeper issue, voiced strongly by the victims' families and community leaders, was a perception of indifference, a feeling that because these were poor black kids, their cases weren't taken seriously enough, quickly enough. They felt dismissed.
So the pressure had to build from the community up.
Absolutely. It was the families, the activists, the sheer unrelenting horror in the news day after day that finally forced the city and eventually the federal government to treat it as the crisis it was. The community's fear and outrage were the catalysts.
That public outcry, the curfews, the patrols, it eventually brought national attention.
It did. The FBI got involved. A massive special task force was formed. Atlanta PD, GBI, FBI, all pooling resources. Over 100 agents at its peak. That federal involvement brought new strategies, including profiling.
And the profilers had a specific prediction about the killer changing his methods.
Yes, by early '81, with bodies piling up and scrutiny intensifying on land disposal sites, the FBI profilers theorized the killer might switch to water disposal, using rivers, bridges. It seemed logical to make evidence harder to find.
So they started watching the bridges.
Exactly. They staked out key bridges over the Chattahoochee River. It was a calculated move based on behavioral science, and it paid off.
This leads directly to the bridge incident, May 22nd, 1981, a really pivotal moment.
Absolutely, the turning point. It's around 2:00 a.m. Officers are positioned near the James Jackson Parkway Bridge, listening.
And they hear something.
A loud splash, distinct, coming from the river below the bridge. Immediately after the splash, another officer spots a car on the bridge above.
What was the car doing?
It was a white 1970 Chevrolet station wagon. It abruptly turned around right there on the bridge and started driving away.
Turning around after the splash, that's incredibly suspicious.
Highly suspicious. The timing was almost perfect. It felt like they had just missed the act of disposal itself. They quickly pulled the car over about half a mile away.
And the driver was Wayne Williams.
Wayne Bertram Williams, 23 years old. He described himself as a music promoter, a freelance photographer. Lived with his parents. The station wagon belonged to them.
What was his explanation for being out there at 2 a.m. near the bridge?
He gave a story about going to Smyrna, a nearby suburb, to audition a singer named Cheryl Johnson. But police could never verify this appointment. It sounded flimsy, like an excuse for being caught near a potential dumping ground.
And Williams wasn't unknown to police at this point, was he? He'd been looked at before.
He had been on their radar, yes. And significantly, he had been seen distributing flyers in predominantly black neighborhoods, the same areas many victims came from.
What were the flyers for?
He was trying to recruit young people, ages 11 to 21, for a singing group he was forming called Gemini. This put him in direct contact, or attempting contact, with the same demographic as the victims.
Motive, opportunity, geographic linkage. It's starting to build.
Right. And while polygraph tests aren't admissible in court, sources say he did fail an FBI-administered polygraph around this time. But the real momentum shifts 2 days after the bridge stopped.
Because they found Nathaniel Cater's body.
Exactly. Pulled from the Chattahoochee River downstream from that bridge. Police immediately believed Williams had killed Cater and thrown his body off the bridge right when the officers heard that splash.
Okay, so they have their prime suspect, caught practically red-handed, they believe. But there was a major fumble right at the scene of the car stop, wasn't there?
A huge one, according to the sources. When they stopped Williams' station wagon that night, officers noticed items in the passenger seat. Gloves and a 24-inch nylon cord.
A cord, like a ligature.
Potentially. It looked similar to ligature marks found on Cater and other victims who had been strangled or suffocated. A possible weapon, right there.
So they collected it, bagged it as evidence.
Incredibly.
Yeah.
No, that nylon cord was never taken into evidence, never analyzed.
Why not?
It's unclear. Maybe overlooked in the moment, rush procedure. Whatever the reason, it was a massive missed opportunity. It meant the prosecution couldn't use a potential direct weapon link.
So without the cord, they had to rely almost entirely on
circumstantial evidence. Specifically, trace evidence. Fibers and hairs. This is where the case enters the realm of forensic science, which was really just emerging in this way.
Fiber analysis became the absolute backbone of the prosecution's case against Williams. Let's break that down. How did it work?
The core idea was transfer theory. When two objects touch, fibers or hairs can transfer between them. The prosecution argued that fibers linked to Williams, his home, and his car were found on so many victims that it couldn't possibly be coincidence.
What was the most significant fiber match? The one everyone remembers.
That would be the carpet fiber. A specific type of yellowish-green nylon carpet fiber from Williams's bedroom.
What made it so specific?
Its cross-section shape. It was trilobal, meaning under a microscope it had 3 distinct lobes, kind of like a propeller or a clover leaf. In that particular yellow-green color, that specific trilobal nylon fiber was relatively uncommon in carpets manufactured back then.
And they found the specific fiber
on multiple victims, linking them directly back to Williams' home environment.
Was it just the carpet? Or were there other fiber links?
Oh, many others. Fibers matching a bedspread from his bedroom were found on victims. Fibers matching the carpeting inside his 1970 Chevy station wagon the car stopped on the bridge were also found.
And the dog hair. That was crucial too, right? From the Charles Stevens case earlier.
Yes, hairs consistent with Williams' family's German Shepherd dog were found on several victims, including Stevens.
So how many different types of fibers and hairs did they ultimately link?
The prosecution presented evidence of 28 different types of fibers and hairs connecting Williams, his home, his car, or his dog to 12 of the victims.
12 victims linked by 28 fiber types. Even if each link is tiny, that sheer number creates a powerful image for a jury.
It does. It paints a picture of extensive contact. It allowed the prosecution to build this web, this intricate pattern of microscopic connections that seemed overwhelming.
And this overwhelming fiber evidence shaped the legal strategy, didn't it? Why only charge him with the 2 adult murders?
Right. They indicted him only for Nathaniel Cater and Jimmy Ray Payne. These were the two adult cases where the fiber evidence was considered the strongest, the most abundant, and perhaps less complicated than the earlier child cases, where evidence might have degraded or been contaminated over time.
But convicting him just on fibers for those two, they needed more. They needed to show he wasn't just randomly connected to Cater and Payne, but that he was the killer responsible for the whole series.
Exactly. And this led to the most controversial part of the trial, the introduction of the pattern cases.
Explain what that means.
The prosecution was allowed by the judge to bring in evidence related to 10 other murders, mostly the child victims, even though Williams wasn't on trial for those specific deaths.
So they used evidence from unsolved or uncharged murders to help convict him of the two he was charged with?
Essentially, yes. The goal wasn't to get convictions for those 10, but to establish a modus operandi, a pattern of behavior, a signature that linked all the crimes together and pointed solely to Williams as the perpetrator of that pattern, therefore making it highly likely he also killed Cater and Payne.
That seems legally complex. Did the defense object?
Oh, vehemently. They argued it was prejudicial, basically putting Williams on trial for crimes he wasn't formally charged with, but the judge allowed it, and it became a cornerstone of the prosecution's case.
And the expert testimony about the fibers themselves must have been powerful. What did the FBI specialist say on the stand?
They delivered testimony that was incredibly impactful. Two FBI agents essentially told the jury that, based on the rarity of the fibers found and the number of matches across victims, the probability of these victims not having come into contact with Wayne Williams was virtually impossible.
Virtually impossible. That phrasing sounds almost definitive, even if it's based on statistics.
It does. It leaves very little room for doubt in a juror's mind, suggesting near certainty based on what was then cutting-edge science.
So you have the bridge incident, the Cater link, the massive fiber web, the pattern evidence from 10 other cases. How did the jury react?
The jury consisted of 9 women, 3 men, 8 African-American, 4 Caucasian. They deliberated for about 11 hours.
And the verdict?
Guilty. On both counts, the murders of Jimmy Ray Payne and Nathaniel Cater, February 27, 1982. Williams was sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms.
The city must have just exhaled after 2 years of terror.
A massive collective sigh of relief. The nightmare was officially declared over. But almost immediately, the next controversy began.
The closing of the other cases.
Right. Immediately following the conviction, law enforcement announced they were closing 23 other murder cases, all the ones that had been part of the task force investigation.
Attributing them all to Williams.
Yes. Officially attributed to Williams, case closed, even though he was never tried or convicted for any of them.
This really gets to the heart of the lingering doubt, doesn't it? Was closing those cases about true justice for those 23 victims? Or was it more about calming the city, closing the book politically, saying, we got the monster, it's over?
That is precisely the question that has fueled skepticism for decades. For the families of those 23 children and young adults, there was no day in court focused solely on their loved one. No specific evidence presented and challenged, just an attribution, an asterisk next to a closed file.
It left the door wide open for doubt. And that doubt wasn't just among the public or the families, it came from inside the investigation itself.
Yeah, let's pivot to that lingering doubt, the alternative theories, because they are significant and persistent. And perhaps the most compelling voice questioning the official narrative came from the FBI's own ranks.
John E. Douglas, the profiler.
The very same. John Douglas, who helped pioneer profiling and worked on this case. In his 1995 book, Mindhunter, he wrote very clearly that he does not believe Wayne Williams committed all the murders attributed to him.
He actually said that after being part of the investigation.
He did, and he added this really chilling, almost cryptic line. It isn't a single offender, and the truth isn't pleasant.
The truth isn't pleasant. What does that imply? That the FBI knew or suspected more? That there were other leads not followed?
It strongly suggests that, doesn't it? That maybe the neat conclusion of one case closed wasn't the whole story, and perhaps authorities knew it, or at least had strong suspicions.
And that leads into the darkest, most controversial alternative theory, potential involvement by white supremacists.
This is where things get really murky and disturbing. A 1986 investigative piece in Spin magazine blew the lid off a secret GBI investigation that had been happening concurrently in 1981.
Secret. While the main task force focused on Williams, the GBI was looking elsewhere.
Apparently so. They were looking into potential Ku Klux Klan involvement. The core allegation was truly explosive, that a specific family with Klan ties living just outside Atlanta was targeting black children to try and incite a race war.
A race war, that's a terrifying motive. Did this secret GBI probe find any specific links to victims?
According to the reports, yes. Extremely specific links regarding one victim, Luby Gita.
Luby Geeter again.
Right.
What was the alleged connection?
The GBI had an informant, a criminal associate of a man named Charles T. Sanders. Sanders was described as a known drug dealer and, importantly, a Klan recruiter.
Okay.
The informant claimed Sanders told him he was going to kill Luby Geeter after a really minor incident. Geeter had accidentally backed his go-kart into Sanders' car.
A traffic incident escalating to murder.
That was the allegation. And the quote attributed to Sanders by the informant is just sickeningly graphic and racist. He allegedly said, "I'm going to kill that black bastard. I'm going to strangle him with my dick."
That's horrifying. Pure hatred. Did they have anything else connecting Sanders or his group?
Yes. There was apparently an audio recording of Sanders' brother talking to another Klan member, saying he was going out to look for another little boy, suggesting a pattern or at least intent.
I'm another little boy. Chilling.
And there was physical corroboration, too. An eyewitness who saw Luby Geeter shortly before he disappeared described being with a white man who had a noticeable scar. Charles Sanders reportedly had a scar consistent with that description.
So you have motive, threats, intent, corroborating descriptions, all pointing towards Sanders and the Klan for at least Luby Geeter's murder.
What happened with this GBI investigation? This is perhaps the most damning part for those who believe in a cover-up. According to the Spin Report and later sources, in 1981, around the time the focus was solidifying on Williams, high-ranking officials allegedly ordered the GBI to shut down its Klan investigation.
Shut it down.
Yes. And worse, the findings were reportedly sealed, classified, hidden from the public, and presumably from Williams' defense team.
Why? Why shut down a lead that seems so specific, so potentially explosive?
The implication is clear. Pursuing the Klan angle, suggesting multiple killers, maybe even white killers igniting racial terror, would have completely undermined the narrative that Wayne Williams was the sole perpetrator. It would have prolonged the fear, complicated the politics, and potentially ignited the very race war the Klan members allegedly wanted. Closing the Williams case offered a quicker, cleaner, less incendiary end to the city's nightmare.
At the cost of potentially letting other killers walk free and burying evidence that could have exonerated Williams from some, if not all, of the crimes?
That's the core of the conspiracy theory, yes. That political expediency and the desire to restore calm trumped the pursuit of the full, potentially much uglier truth.
This unresolved Klan angle, Douglas's doubts, it all kept the case simmering, which eventually led to calls for modern testing, right? DNA.
Yes. Decades later, advances in DNA technology offered a potential way to revisit the physical evidence, particularly the hairs. In 2007, some testing was finally permitted.
What did they test? The dog hair.
Primarily, yes. The dog hair found on victims like Charles Stevens, which is a key piece linking Williams. They tested its mitochondrial DNA, mtDNA.
And what did the mtDNA show?
Okay, so mtDNA is passed down maternally. It shows lineage, but it's not unique like nuclear DNA. The test showed the dog hair did have the same mtDNA sequence as Williams' family's German Shepherd.
So a match.
A match to the maternal line, yes, but not necessarily that specific dog. The expert who did the test, Dr. Elizabeth Wickham, stated the sequence was found in about 1 out of every 100 dogs. She called it fairly significant because it linked to Williams's dog's lineage, but crucially, it didn't exclude other dogs with the same maternal line.
So it strengthened the link statistically, but wasn't a unique identifier, not the smoking gun DNA often is.
Exactly. It supported the prosecution's original assertion, but didn't provide absolute certainty. It couldn't definitively say this hair came from Williams' dog and no other dog.
Were human hairs tested too, the Caucasian hairs found on Stevens? Or others?
They tested 2 human hairs found on one of the victims. The mtDNA from those hairs did match Wayne Williams' mtDNA sequence.
Okay, that sounds more definitive.
Again, it's significant, but mtDNA limitations apply. That specific mtDNA sequence, while matching Williams, could also be found in other individuals in the general population, though it did eliminate about 99.5% of people. So, it strongly pointed towards Williams, but, like the dog hair, didn't offer that absolute unique identification of nuclear DNA.
So even the modern DNA testing, while providing more statistical weight, didn't fully resolve the ambiguities.
No, it didn't deliver a knockout blow either way. The evidence was old, likely degraded. Mitochondrial DNA just isn't as discriminating as nuclear DNA. It added layers, but didn't provide the final definitive answer everyone hoped for.
And this lack of definitive closure, coupled with the lingering questions and Williams maintaining his innocence, it led to the case being reopened again recently.
Yes, in 2019, Atlanta's then-mayor, Keisha Lance Bottoms, ordered the city to re-examine the evidence in the child murder cases attributed to Williams, specifically hoping new DNA technology could finally provide answers for the families.
A gesture towards closure for those families who never got a trial.
Exactly. A recognition that the mass closure in 1982 left too many questions unanswered. But even as it was reopened, officials were cautious.
Why? What were the challenges?
Massive challenges. After 40 years, evidence degrades. Chain of custody, who handled what, when, how it was stored, becomes questionable. There was real concern that there might be nothing left to be tested that could yield reliable results.
So what's the status now? Have there been any results from this 2019 reopening?
As of the latest reports I've seen, which were maybe late 2022 or early 2023, they had managed to get DNA samples from evidence related to 2 of the child cases. Those samples were sent to a private lab in Salt Lake City for analysis.
And the results?
Nothing has been made public. Despite requests from victims' families and the media, the findings, if any, remain unreleased. It's possible the degradation was too severe, or perhaps the results were inconclusive, or maybe they're still being analyzed. The wait continues.
So after all this time, the families are still waiting for answers. It's heartbreaking.
It truly is. The legacy of the Atlanta murders is just. It's one of profound trauma, deep systemic failure, and questions that refuse to go away.
You look back at the initial slow response, the perception that these kids didn't matter enough.
Right. Then the intense reliance on this novel, but highly debated, fiber evidence. And finally, the mass closure of 23 cases without trial. It all just shattered trust between the community and law enforcement, a trust that, for many, has never been fully rebuilt.
And you have Wayne Williams, still in prison, still insisting he's innocent, maybe a scapegoat.
While the 23 attributed cases remain officially closed, the victims' families are caught in this limbo, still advocating, still hoping for the full truth, whatever it may be.
It really stands as this grim, complex moment in American justice. A reminder that stopping the panic, ending the fear, that doesn't always mean the whole truth came out.
Absolutely. It forces you to confront uncomfortable possibilities. Was justice served for all, or just for some? Was the need for resolution prioritized over the need for absolute truth?
And it leaves us with that final, deeply unsettling question that still haunts Atlanta. If Wayne Williams didn't commit all those murders, who did? And why was that other investigation, the Klan investigation, seemingly buried? What truth remains hidden?
Okay, so we hope you liked our today's discussion. For more such discussions, subscribe to our channel, Phantom Homicide.